The moment my mother-in-law called my husband the biggest mistake of my life at our wedding reception, I should have known everything that came after would be a war. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that her biggest mistake was about to become my greatest blessing in ways she could never imagine. My name is Maya Chen, and this is the story of how a woman who tried to destroy my marriage ended up giving me everything I never knew I wanted. The wedding was supposed to be perfect. Small ceremony, close family, nothing extravagant, because David and I both believed in starting our marriage debt-free and practical. We'd saved for 2 years, planned every detail, kept it intimate and meaningful. 50 guests, a beautiful garden venue, late September, when the leaves were just starting to turn gold. David looked at me that morning like I was the only person in the world, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. His mother, Patricia Thornton, arrived late to the ceremony, wearing black. Not navy, not charcoal, pure black, like she was attending a funeral. She sat in the front row with her arms crossed, didn't smile during the vows, didn't cry during the readings, just stared at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Disapproval mixed with something darker, something that felt almost like victory, like she knew something I didn't. The reception started beautifully. Our first dance, the toasts from my parents, laughter and music, and the kind of joy that makes your face hurt from smiling. Then Patricia stood up. She didn't wait for the proper moment, didn't ask the DJ to pause the music, just grabbed a microphone from the bandstand and tapped it 3 times. The room went quiet. David's face went pale. He knew what was coming before I did. Patricia smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and began. "I'd like to say a few words about my son." Her voice was steady, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this moment. David has always been impulsive. Even as a child, he made decisions without thinking them through. Chose friends I didn't approve of, picked careers I warned him against, and now— She paused for effect, letting her eyes sweep across the room before landing on me. Now he's made the biggest mistake of his life. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Marrying someone so completely unsuitable, so utterly wrong for our family, someone who will drag him down and waste all the potential I spent 32 years cultivating. But David never listens. He never has. So here we are, celebrating a mistake that will cost him everything he could have been. She set down the microphone and sat down like she'd just given a perfectly normal mother of the groom speech. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. My mother stood up, furious, but my father pulled her back down. David's father, Richard, looked at his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between exhaustion and resignation. Like this wasn't the first time she'd done something unforgivable, and it wouldn't be the last. "Where are you watching from?" Because I need to know I'm not alone in thinking what happened next was absolutely justified. David stood up slowly. His hand was shaking when he took my hand. "Mom," he said quietly, "you should leave." Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. "Leave my own son's wedding? Don't be dramatic, David. Someone needs to tell you the truth, and clearly nobody else has the courage." "The truth," David said, his voice getting stronger, "is that you've spent my entire life trying to control every decision I make. The truth is that Maya is the best thing that ever happened to me. And the truth is that if you can't respect my wife, you're not welcome in our lives." He said it calmly, firmly, with none of the anger I would have felt. Patricia's face went white, then red. "You'll regret this. Both of you. Mark my words, this marriage won't last a year. She'll ruin you, David. And when it all falls apart, don't come crying to me." She gathered her purse, her jacket, and walked out of our wedding reception, with her head held high. Richard followed her after giving David an apologetic look and squeezing my shoulder briefly. The door closed behind them, and for a moment the silence was deafening. Then my cousin Elena started clapping, slowly at first, then louder. Then my best friend joined in, then David's college roommate. Then, suddenly, the entire reception was applauding. Not for Patricia's exit, but for David's courage. For us. For standing up to someone who'd tried to poison the happiest day of our lives. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. But I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Now back to the disaster, because Patricia's exit was just the beginning. The reception continued, but the joy felt fragile, like glass that had cracked but hadn't shattered yet. David held my hand through dinner, through the cake cutting, through every moment that should have been perfect, but now felt tainted by his mother's words. We left early, skipped the after-party his friends had planned, and drove to our honeymoon cabin in silence. The 2-hour drive felt like 10. When we finally arrived, David sat on the porch steps and put his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have warned you. I should have known she'd do something like this. I should have." I sat down beside him and took his face in my hands. "David, look at me. Your mother called you a mistake. She called our marriage a mistake. But you know what I think? I think she just gave us the greatest gift we could ask for." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "How is that a gift?" "Because now we know exactly where we stand. No more pretending. No more walking on eggshells. No more wondering if she'll ever accept me. It's done. It's clear. And now we can build our life without her shadow hanging over everything we do." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he kissed my forehead. "How did I get so lucky?" "You married someone unsuitable," I said, smiling. "Apparently it's your specialty." We spent our honeymoon hiking, talking, planning our future without the weight of his mother's expectations crushing every dream. We talked about the kind of life we wanted, the kind of family we'd build, the kind of people we wanted to become. And nowhere in those conversations did Patricia Thornton have a place. When we returned home 2 weeks later, there were 17 missed calls from Patricia on David's phone. He deleted them without listening. There were 12 emails. He blocked her address. There was a letter taped to our apartment door, pages and pages of how we were ruining the family, destroying his future, breaking her heart. David read the first paragraph, then handed it to me. "What do you want to do with this?" I walked to the kitchen, turned on the stove, and held the letter over the flame until it caught. We watched it burn in the sink, every word of manipulation and guilt turning to ash. "That's what we do with poison," I said. "We burn it before it spreads." For 6 months, we heard nothing from Patricia. David's father called occasionally. Brief conversations that never mentioned her. "She's stubborn," Richard would say. "Give her time." But David was done giving her time. He was done giving her power over his life. We were building something beautiful, and we weren't going to let her tear it down. I got pregnant 4 months after the wedding. We didn't plan it, didn't expect it. But when those 2 lines appeared on the test, David cried. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, the kind of tears that come from realizing your whole life is about to change in the most incredible way. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, like he couldn't quite believe it. "We're actually having a baby." The first person we told was my mother. She screamed so loud our neighbors called to make sure everything was okay. The second person we told was David's father. He was quiet for a moment. Then his voice cracked. "Congratulations, son. You're going to be an amazing father." "Should I tell Mom?" David asked. Richard sighed. "That's up to you, but you know she'll find out eventually." David thought about it for a long time. Finally, he said, "If she wants to be part of our child's life, she needs to apologize, to both of us, and she needs to mean it." "I'll tell her," Richard said, "but don't hold your breath." We didn't. 3 weeks later, Patricia called. David put her on speaker so I could hear. "I understand you're having a baby," she said. No greeting, no warmth, just statement of fact. "Yes," David said. "Maya's 12 weeks along. Everything's healthy." "I see. And you thought you should keep this from me? Your own mother?" "You called my wife the biggest mistake of my life at our wedding reception. You tried to sabotage the happiest day of our lives. Why would we share anything with you?" Silence. Then, I was emotional. You can't hold that against me forever. It wasn't emotion, Mom. It was cruelty. And until you apologize, sincerely apologize to Maya and me, you're not part of our lives. That includes our child. Patricia's voice went cold. You're using my grandchild as a weapon. That's unconscionable, David. No, you used our wedding as a platform for your disapproval. I'm just setting boundaries. There's a difference. She hung up. David stared at the phone for a moment, then looked at me. Was I too harsh? I took his hand. You were perfect. Our child deserves grandparents who respect their parents, not someone who thinks their mother is a mistake. The pregnancy progressed beautifully. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Cravings for pickles and ice cream that made no sense. Exhaustion that hit like a truck at 3 in the afternoon. But every ultrasound, every flutter of movement, every moment of feeling our daughter grow inside me, it was magic. We found out at 20 weeks that we were having a girl. David sobbed in the ultrasound room, holding my hand so tight I thought he might break it. A daughter, he whispered. We're having a daughter. We named her Sophie, after David's grandmother, the woman who'd raised him while Patricia was building her career. The woman who'd taught him kindness, patience, and the importance of choosing your own path. Patricia had hated her mother-in-law, which made the name choice even more meaningful to David. Grandma Sophie would have loved Maya, he told me one night, his hand on my growing belly. She would have seen what I see. Someone strong, someone brave, someone who makes me better. I cried. Pregnancy hormones made everything feel more intense, but those were real tears. Grateful tears for a man who saw me clearly and loved what he saw. Patricia sent a gift when she found out about the name. A silver rattle, expensive and impersonal, with a card that said, "For my granddaughter, even if her parents have forgotten what family means." David sent it back with a note. Family means love and respect. When you're ready to offer both, we'll talk. Until then, keep your gifts. My mother was horrified. David, she's still your mother. Maybe you should try harder to reconcile. But my father, who'd watched Patricia destroy our wedding reception, shook his head. Some people don't deserve access to your life just because they share your blood. You're protecting your family. That takes courage. Sophie was born on a Tuesday morning in March, after 18 hours of labor that felt like running a marathon while someone punched you in the stomach. David never left my side, held my hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement even when I screamed at him that this was all his fault. When Sophie finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming her lungs out, David cut the cord with shaking hands and then collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed. She's here, he kept saying. Our daughter is here. She was beautiful. Dark hair like mine, David's nose, my mother's chin. She was 7 pounds 3 ounces of absolute perfection, and the moment they placed her in my arms, I understood what people meant when they said your heart exists outside your body. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Friends visited, my parents came and cried happy tears. David's father showed up with flowers and the biggest teddy bear I'd ever seen. She's perfect, Richard whispered, holding Sophie with the kind of gentleness that spoke of long practice. Absolutely perfect. Is Patricia coming? David asked quietly. Richard shook his head. I asked her to, begged her actually, but she said she won't come until you apologize for cutting her out. David's jaw tightened. Then she won't come. We brought Sophie home to our small 2-bedroom apartment. We'd spent weeks preparing her nursery, painting walls a soft yellow, assembling furniture that came with instructions in 3 languages and required engineering degrees to understand. The room was small but perfect, filled with love and anticipation, and stuffed animals from friends who couldn't wait to meet her. The first few weeks were chaos. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, learning to breastfeed while crying because nobody tells you how hard it actually is. But David was there for everything. 2 a.m. feedings, 3 a.m. diaper explosions, 4 a.m. crying sessions where we both just held each other and our screaming daughter, and wondered how anyone survives parenthood. "We're doing this together," he'd say, when I felt like I was drowning. "Every moment, every mess, every miracle, together." When Sophie was 3 weeks old, Patricia showed up at our door unannounced. I was wearing pajamas at 2 in the afternoon, hadn't showered in 2 days, and Sophie was screaming in her bassinet. David was at work, his first day back, and I was alone trying to figure out how to soothe a baby who seemed determined to scream forever. I opened the door, holding Sophie against my shoulder, bouncing her in that desperate rhythm every new parent learns, and there was Patricia. Designer suit, perfect hair, makeup flawless, looking at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "I'm here to see my granddaughter," she announced. Not hello. Not how are you, just a demand. "Patricia, David's not home, and we agreed that you needed to apologize before." "I don't need anyone's permission to see my grandchild," she interrupted, pushing past me into the apartment. "Good Lord, what happened in here? It looks like a disaster zone." The living room was a mess. Burp cloths on every surface, bottles in various stages of washing, my breast pump sitting on the coffee table because I'd been too exhausted to put it away. Baby clothes were piled on the couch, waiting to be folded, and there were at least 4 half-empty water bottles scattered around, because staying hydrated while breastfeeding meant drinking constantly, and I kept forgetting where I'd put things down. "It's called having a newborn," I said, my voice tight. "It's called being overwhelmed and unprepared," Patricia corrected. "When David was a baby, I managed a full-time career and kept an immaculate home. It's about priorities, Maya." Sophie's screaming had escalated to that pitch that makes your ears hurt and your soul cry. I was bouncing her faster now, patting her back, doing everything the pediatrician had suggested, but nothing was working. "You need to burp her properly," Patricia said, reaching for Sophie. "You're doing it wrong." I stepped back. "Please don't touch her." "Excuse me?" Patricia's voice went ice cold. I said, "Please don't touch her. David made it clear that until you apologize for what you did at our wedding, you're not part of Sophie's life." "That's absurd. I'm her grandmother. I have rights." "You have rights when you show respect. You called my husband a mistake. You tried to destroy our wedding. You've sent passive-aggressive gifts and refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. So no, you don't get to waltz in here and criticize my parenting while demanding access to my daughter." Patricia's face went through several shades of red. "You're keeping my grandchild from me because of your own insecurity. You know you're not good enough for David, so you're punishing me for saying the truth." Sophie was still screaming. My head was pounding. My body ached from sleep deprivation and recovery from childbirth. And this woman, this cruel, manipulative woman, was standing in my home, attacking me, while my newborn daughter cried. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" I said, "Get out. Get out of my home. Get out of our lives. And don't come back until you can offer a genuine apology and actual respect." "David will hear about this. He'll know you turned me away from seeing my granddaughter." "Good. Tell him. Tell him exactly what you said to me. Tell him you called me unprepared and criticized my home and demanded access without offering any of the accountability he asked for." "Please, Patricia, tell him everything." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed her purse and walked to the door. "You'll regret this, Maya. When this marriage falls apart, and it will, you'll realize you needed me more than I needed you." She left. The door clicked shut. And Sophie, as if sensing the toxic presence was gone, suddenly stopped crying. Just stopped, mid-scream, and looked up at me with those big dark eyes that were still learning to focus. Then she yawned. "Yeah, baby girl," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "She's exhausting, isn't she?" When David came home that evening, I told him everything. Every word Patricia had said. Every criticism, every demand. He listened in silence, his jaw getting tighter with each sentence. When I finished, he pulled out his phone and called his mother. She answered on the first ring. David, your wife is being completely unreasonable. My wife, David said, his voice deadly calm, is recovering from giving birth to our daughter while learning to be a mother. She's exhausted, overwhelmed, and doing an incredible job. And you showed up uninvited, criticized her, demanded access to our child, and refused to show any of the respect I explicitly asked for. I have a right to see my granddaughter. You have no rights here, Mom. None. You earned access to our lives through respect and love, and you've offered neither. You came to our home, attacked my wife while she was alone and vulnerable, and then acted like she's the unreasonable one. Silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, David continued. You're going to leave us alone, completely alone. No calls, no visits, no gifts, no passive-aggressive messages through Dad. And when you're ready, truly ready, to offer Maya and me a genuine apology for what you did at our wedding and what you said today, we'll consider allowing you back into our lives. Until then, you're not my mother. You're just someone I used to know. He hung up. Then he turned to me, pulled me into his arms, and held me while I cried. Not sad tears, not hurt tears, but relieved tears. Grateful tears. The tears of a woman who'd just watched her husband choose her, protect her, stand up for her in ways that felt like the truest kind of love. Thank you, I whispered against his chest. For what? For being exactly who I needed you to be. 2 years passed without a word from Patricia. 2 years of watching Sophie grow from a screaming newborn into a toddler with opinions about everything. 2 years of building a life that felt complete and whole without the shadow of his mother's disapproval. Sophie took her first steps at 11 months, chasing after our neighbor's cat. David cried. Again. I was starting to think my husband cried more than I did, but I loved him for it. Loved that he felt everything so deeply, that fatherhood had cracked him open in the best possible ways. Her first word was Dada, which made David insufferable for a week. Her second word was no, which she used approximately 400 times a day. She had my stubbornness and David's sweetness, a combination that was both delightful and exhausting. We celebrated her first birthday with a small party in the park. My parents, David's father, who'd maintained a quiet relationship with us despite Patricia's fury, and a few close friends. Sophie wore a tiny crown and smashed cake into her face with the kind of joy that only toddlers can access. Richard brought her a rocking horse, handmade, beautiful, with her name carved into the side. From your grandpa, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Because I might not get to see you as often as I'd like, but I want you to know you're loved. David hugged his father for a long time. You can see her whenever you want, Dad. You know that. Your mother, Richard started, then stopped. She's made her choice. I can't change her mind, but I won't let her stubbornness cost me my granddaughter. It was the first time Richard had openly chosen us over Patricia. The first time he'd acknowledged that his wife's behavior was the problem, not our boundaries. It meant more than he probably knew. When Sophie was 18 months old, David got a job offer in Seattle. Better position, significantly better pay, opportunity to work on projects he'd been dreaming about for years. We'd been living in Sacramento, close to both our families, but Seattle offered us a fresh start and a chance to build something bigger. What do you think? David asked me one night after Sophie was asleep. It's across the country, I said carefully. We'd be leaving everyone we know. Everyone who matters could visit. And honestly, Maya, part of me wants the distance, wants to build our life somewhere my mother can't just show up unannounced. I understood. Patricia hadn't contacted us in 2 years, but her presence still lingered. The fear that she'd appear, that she'd try again, that we'd have to keep fighting the same battles. Distance sounded like peace. Let's do it, I said. Let's start over somewhere new. We moved to Seattle 3 months later. A 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood full of young families. Parks within walking distance. Good schools for when Sophie was older. David started his new job and thrived. I found work as a freelance graphic designer, something I could do from home while Sophie napped, something that let me contribute financially without sacrificing time with our daughter. Life was good, better than good. We made friends with other young parents, joined a co-op preschool, discovered coffee shops and hiking trails, and the kind of community that feels like chosen family. Sophie started talking in full sentences, asking questions about everything, developing a personality that was entirely her own. Mama, why is the sky blue? Dada, where do clouds go? Grandpa, can horses fly? Richard visited twice that first year in Seattle. Patricia never came, never called, never acknowledged our move. David's relationship with his mother existed in a strange limbo, not reconciled, but not entirely severed either. She'd sent a card on Sophie's second birthday. No gift, just a card that said, "Thinking of my granddaughter on her special day." David had stared at it for a long time, then put it in a drawer. "What does it mean?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe she's softening. Maybe she's just trying to maintain some connection without actually changing." We didn't respond to the card. We'd set our boundaries, and we weren't moving them without a real apology, without actual change. When Sophie was 3, she started asking about grandparents. She had my parents who video called twice a week and visited every few months. She had Grandpa Richard, who sent her drawings and called to hear about her day. But she'd noticed that other kids had 2 sets of grandparents, and she only had 1.5. "Where's Dada's mama?" she asked one evening at dinner, her face serious in that way 3-year-olds get when they're trying to understand something confusing. David looked at me, then at Sophie. "Dada's mama lives far away, sweetheart. We don't see her very often." "Why not? How do you explain complex family dynamics to a 3-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that her grandmother chose pride over love? That sometimes adults make decisions that hurt everyone, including themselves? Sometimes people make choices that keep them away from the people they love," I said carefully. "It's sad, but it's their choice, not ours." Sophie thought about this while munching on her chicken nuggets. "Is she nice?" David's face did something complicated. "I don't know anymore, Sophie. I hope so, but I'm not sure." 3 months after that conversation, Richard called. His voice was shaking. "David, it's your mother. She's in the hospital." My heart stopped. Whatever anger I felt toward Patricia, whatever boundaries we'd built, she was still David's mother, still Sophie's grandmother, still human. "What happened?" David's voice was tight. "Stroke, significant one. She's stable now, but the doctors say the next 48 hours are critical." David looked at me. I saw the question in his eyes, the conflict, the pain. "Go," I said. "Take the next flight. Be with your father." "Will you come?" I thought about it. Thought about Patricia's cruelty, her manipulation, her complete refusal to apologize or acknowledge any wrongdoing. Thought about whether I wanted Sophie exposed to that, even in a hospital room, even when Patricia was vulnerable. Not yet. Let's see how she is. Let's see if she even wants us there. David flew to Sacramento that night. I stayed home with Sophie, waiting for updates, trying to explain to a 3-year-old why Dada had to leave suddenly, why Mama was checking her phone every 5 minutes. The first call came at midnight. "She's asking for me," David said, his voice strange. "Actually asking, not demanding. Maya, she's scared." "What did you tell her?" "That I'm here. That I've always been here. That she's the one who left." The second call came at 6 in the morning. "She wants to see Sophie. Keeps asking about her granddaughter, saying she's made mistakes." "David, be careful. This could be the stroke talking, or fear, or manipulation. Don't let your guard down just because she's sick." "I know. But Maya, what if she means it? What if almost dying has actually changed her?" "Then she'll prove it when she's recovered. Real change isn't about deathbed confessions. It's about sustained behavior over time." The third call came 3 days later. "She's going to recover. The doctors are optimistic. But she's asked for family therapy, all of us. She wants to make things right." I didn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. Patricia Thornton didn't make things right. She made demands and expected compliance. Did she apologize? I asked. Silence. Then, not exactly. But she admitted she's been difficult. Difficult. She called you the biggest mistake of her life at our wedding. She called me unsuitable. She showed up at our home and attacked me while I was alone with a newborn. And the best she can offer is that she's been difficult? Maya, please. She's my mother. She almost died. Can we at least try? And there it was. The moment I'd been dreading for 3 years. The moment where love and boundaries collided, where forgiveness and self-protection battled for dominance. I looked at Sophie, playing with her blocks on the living room floor, completely unaware that her grandmother's health crisis was forcing decisions that would shape her entire childhood. Here's what I'll agree to, I said finally. We'll do therapy, but it has to be real therapy with a licensed professional, not just a conversation where she performs contrition and expects immediate forgiveness. And if at any point she reverts to the manipulation and cruelty we've experienced, we're done. Permanently. Fair enough. David flew home 2 days later. We had a long, hard conversation about what boundaries looked like in this new reality, what we'd accept and what we wouldn't. And then we called Patricia's therapist and scheduled our first family session. That was 4 months ago. We've had 6 sessions so far. Patricia has cried in 3 of them, genuinely cried in ways I've never seen before. She's acknowledged the pain she caused, the damage her need for control created, the years she lost because pride mattered more than love. She's apologized, multiple times, with actual words like, I was wrong, and I hurt you both terribly, and I'm sorry. She met Sophie last month. Video call first, supervised, with the therapist on the line. Sophie was shy, uncertain, but curious about this grandmother she'd heard about but never really known. Patricia was gentle, careful, asked Sophie about her favorite color, her favorite animal, what she liked to do at the park. It was awkward and sweet, and nothing like the Patricia I'd known before. Last week, she flew to Seattle. One-day visit, public location, clear boundaries. We met at a park, neutral territory, where Sophie could play if things got uncomfortable. Patricia brought a gift. A handmade quilt with Sophie's name embroidered in the corner. I made it myself, she said quietly. Took me 3 months. I wanted Sophie to have something from me that was made with love, not bought with money. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and said the words I'd waited 3 years to hear. Maya, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said at your wedding. I'm sorry for every cruel word, every manipulation, every moment I made you feel less than the incredible woman you are. David didn't make a mistake marrying you. I made a mistake not seeing what he saw. You're not unsuitable. You're perfect for him. And you're an amazing mother to my granddaughter, I cried. David cried. Sophie asked why everyone was leaking from their eyes. And Patricia, the woman who'd called my husband her biggest mistake, hugged me for the first time and whispered, Thank you for not giving up on our family. Thank you for protecting my son and my granddaughter, even when it meant protecting them from me. Recovery isn't linear. Patricia still has moments where her old controlling instincts surface. We still have boundaries, still watch carefully, still protect our peace. But she's trying. Really trying. And that mistake she mentioned at our wedding, the one she was so sure would destroy David's life, has become the blessing that saved our family. Subscribe if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're love in its most protective form. And comment below telling me about a time standing your ground changed everything. I read every single one, and your stories matter. They really do.